One of the things that we learned is that our old people tell us that it doesn't matter what issue you're talking about with Aboriginal people, with First Nations people, you are always talking about culture. That's how huge it is. That it doesn't matter what we're talking about. There is a cultural response to it. And this also contains our families, how we raise our children. What are the components of our families? How is it that we get together as men and women? How do we create those healthy relationships in our communities? What is it that we're missing in our communities? I mean, one of the documents that we're so proud of is UNDRIP. Are you familiar with UNDRIP? It's the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Peoples. And in there it declares that we have a right to an education in our own language, in our own culture. Somebody at that level got it, that they understood how big and huge it is. One of those important things that I've been doing is that for Musqueam's Cultural College is that they contracted me to write a declaration on Cree language, on Plains Cree language. One of the things that I had to do in this was to consult with a lot of elders in that. And they told us that we've reached the stage of grandparents who don't speak Cree. We always used to go to our grandparents or our great auntie for anything we wanted to know in that language. Now we no longer can. And that so many of us are now learning Cree language as a second language. And they say when you learn a language as a second language, you're always going to miss something. You're always going to miss something. And now I understand what very precious things that we do miss. Oh, it's okay if your little boy talks. I don't mind at all. And this evening we're going to talk about families. Like I say, how is it that we put together those families? How do we court with one another? When does a family start becoming a family? What are those rites and passages that we're missing? What should we be doing for our little babies when they're first conceived? And that's what my husband is going to talk about. He is the Elder in Residence and the Dean of Cultural Studies at Musqueam's Cultural College. He also works very closely with urban Aboriginal people. He sits on some committees for the City of Edmonton, and they are doing a really good job of that reconciliation and connecting with Aboriginal people in the city. And I'm really happy to see so many people here. I get kind of nervous. I have no nervousness at all when I'm talking to people I don't know. But when I see a whole bunch of people that I do know, I kind of get kind of nervous. So I'm going to hand this over to Jerry Saddleback now. Thanks.
How to turn on this thing here?
Oh, it's on. It's on.
It's on? Okay. Oh, all right. It's connected. I thought if I turned it on, I'd resonate. Oh, behold. But anyway, I'm really grateful to all of you, to see so many friends and relatives. Frank over there, and different ones are friends all over, and Carson, different ones that I either worked with directly or indirectly in the past. I guess when you're within this, I guess the title heading of this section is more in terms of the area of family. When you say family, within our own way of thinking in our Plains Cree thought process, as we see from that perspective, and it's always in the, I guess you could say, pre-contact, from the pre-contact era. And that's how we look at it. Being that it's there's still, like, there's snow on the ground, it's winter time, so we used to go through 4 different versions of the language during winter months in a circular encampment. 4 different locations within the encampment. You have 4 teepees, all going simultaneously day and night, telling their story. With several others, of course, all kind of taking over each other within like the intro version, the east side, general version on south side of the camp, west side with specific word for word version, and the ceremonial version on north side of the camp. And these are winter months, and they're talking about and it's another system, I guess you could say, of oral tradition of how you instill within your memory bank a permanent place for this information to eventually be passed on into for future generation, kind of a thing. And so we had our ways of doing that. The intro version being, of course, a very Eastern teepee, a very holistic version, where we look at kind of like, for lack of a better, we're kind of like a skeletal framework, if you want, of the whole entire picture, and then from there we move to the other teepees. Within several years, I guess, eventually you get to the final teepee, which is ceremonial teepee. But it's during this whole entire process, I guess, that our old people used to talk about some of these things that in whatever detail that from whichever part of the camp that they're talking from, they always. With me, sometimes what I do is I try to rotate. Sometimes I do like a little blurb of the intro and maybe a little bit of the general version. Intro is they call it the highlighted version of the entire scope of the story. And where you have a general version is kaya huatik. That means you're adding, some more into that picture to enlighten you with, the whole thing. And then you have Katipuatik, which is the recited version. So those are, in several days at a time. 4 days, 4 nights with the intro version. They say Kasasapwatsimok, they call it. Kasasapwatsimok is a 24-hour cycle daylight. And of course, done with several elders. And then your general version, same thing. And that one is double the time, anywhere from 8 to 16 days. Aina neo, we say 4 days, neo 4, and then the other one is aina neo, like an additional 4, kind of like aina neo. But ayuwa na neo, we say, would be 4 times 4, which would be anywhere from 4 to 16 days. So in the general version, and then your specific word for word version, which would be 1 lunar moon, approximately maybe 27, 28 days. This is, again, day and night. Kasasapwatsim, done by several other itatapapistamatos, means that the word the last elder left off, the other elder takes over from there, from whatever context they're, either one of these, whether it's a very detailed and cited word for word. And then the final teepee is, of course, the general version, which is, after you've learned through a lifetime, the recited version, up to the recited version, then they move you over to the ceremonial version. Every now and then, you'll have to excuse my Coke, as long as it has a kind of a ring to it. But anyway, you have the northern teepee, and that one is the ceremonial version. That one takes approximately 4 months. There again, Kasasapwatsimok, right straight through. Remember, these are winter months, so it's a straight through kind of a thing. So you can imagine, the size of that camp for one thing, and it's an autonomous chief with one big camp kind of a thing. And so here's the pre-contact era. And then, of course, you have the different, with this one here, whenever elders are called upon, or our elders, when we call upon them, we try to have something kind of like a specific topic at hand, and like what you did here, which is more concerned with just family alone. That's with the topic of family itself. In our language, we say family. We say. Just before I go into that, I wanted to tell you about just a little short condensed version of our pre-contact history of creation story. We believe in what they call the Father of the universe, and he deliberately names himself as Kse Manto. Kse Manto is a compassionate, kind God. Or, again, we're trying to get it close, trying to interpret it as close as I can. And then you have the Mother of the universe, Kse Manto Squil, compassionate, kind God, woman. So we have those. Within that culture of pre-contact era, it was the older elders that really passed the story on to us, really, because already those older generation that were, 112, 123, 121, two 116-year-old ladies, and other ones like that passed this version on, already called these other elders younger elders, and those younger elders were 80 and 90 years old at the time. So, but these guys were like way over 100, and they had kind of like virtually zilch experience as far as I guess you could say the colonized lifestyle. It was kind of like pre-contact era. That's where they came from, that they originated. And why I say that is many of them were deliberately staying away from colonization physically, going around physically staying as far as they could. Why? You have all of the reasons why, I'm pretty sure, of the history of that colonization period. So, but anyway, one of the main reason why, I guess, was to maintain the purity of I guess you could say, those purest ways of doing things, the story itself, which we call the long story, that kind of thing, and all of these different things, the maintenance of that, and to maintain it for future generations. And then, of course, there was also these other people that during that time that were in the midst of colonization, and it was during the same time, but they were traditional people, but they went underground with it, that information. One of the other reasons why, of course, is for several generations, there's different things like our ceremonies were forcefully stopped and different things like that. When you see this, the sun dance itself, sometimes you'll see a hide there and sticks around there, and every now and then these elders will put down their stick and take the hide, and that's done in the memory of the ones that had passed on, that didn't want to use those loud drums because they were scared of what they call red coats to come and tear up their ceremony. So those are different kinds of things that were happening. So what was taking place was there was that physical, people that were physically away from that type of colonization, and the ones that went underground with it. And for several generations, when the ceremonies were stopped, by the time some of these, our relatives, tried to pass this information on back to their, I guess you could say, now colonized relatives, the ones that, they say that means they came out into a midst of colonization. And by the time they tried to tell their now colonized relatives that we have our own long story and our own traditional ceremonies and things like that, they said, the other one said, I found a different way. I've been converted to another, way of belief from the other side of the world. It's the same God. So, basically that's what the kind of answer they got. So from there, they just more or less kept it wiatis, they call it. Wiatis means just within their own nuclear family. Whoever cared to learn, their kids, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, that's it, and they maintained it and kept it that way. And that's the reason why, when I went on that 5-year journey with Confederacy of Treaty 6, asked me to go and get that information of the purity of the elders' belief from 1876 as far as what they really believed in, on what the treaty was about. It was during that time when I discovered that we only had a handful of elders that knew the long story within the entire Treaty 6 area. That's why we say that the numbers remain small because of that, the very thing I was talking about. So those are some of the kinds of things that we, kind of have to be mindful of, and especially with some of you younger generation that are wanting to dig deeper into, with your old people and grandparents and whatnot, to maintain a level of awareness that, that you need to address in that manner. So it's, with that, we say Mother of the Universe, Father of the Universe. So, ladies and gentlemen, we actually have a Mother of the Universe, according to that story. And according to old people, when they say Xemanto, compassionate, kind God, one old man said, he went like this. He said, who could be more compassionate than the giver of the everlasting cycle of life? That's what he said. We could just say God too, he said, but he deliberately called himself compassionate, kind God. So that's how we address him in our Plains Creed. And then we have not only that, but we have a child of the universe. So that's the story. That's how far back we old people, our old people, they take it that far back, as far as that history, the pre-contact history is concerned with. And in our language, we have what they call the holy language, or the sacred creed, if you want to call it high creed, that kind of thing. We have that kind of a creed, a language of, they call it Paskituewan language. Paskituewan language is that type of a language. So within that Paskituewan language, we have a word born out of that, from that family. I guess he wanted to show the rest of his universe that he was about to create, of the holiness and sacredness of that concept of the word. This family. Third, please. With this, when we say that, I have a Mayan son-in-law who studies the etymology of those words there, the key words, in trying to tie in some of the key words that come from his culture, associating the similarities. Like one example of that similarity is the word they have for pyramid, Teotawahogan, is the same word that we have for the description, a descriptive word for the word pyramid. So those are some of the kinds of things that he tries to connect us, or that their culture and our culture and the similarities of that. So he was the one that said that it's the only word that he come across that starts off with a singular and ends with a plural. Singular, plural. Some of you linguists, so they'll probably know what I'm talking about. But it's the word we have for family. So that family there, in that concept, that's where it starts from. And then the old people, as far as that teaching of the home within that circular encampment, and we have what you would term a story, an excerpt, if you want to call it. Yuktua takes, that's how we say excerpt in Cree, from that. It's taken a little chunk of it from that history of creation story. And what it is just talking about the raising of the children, where the Creator, after he's seen that there was this, what we would term as, in our culture, as man stepping over ipastahot. That means ipastahot is he stepped over the parameters of the dictates of his natural law. This man did that. When he stepped over that, then after that, he said he's going to prescribe to him a very specific way of how he's going to lend children to him, his first couple. By the way, with this, we have our own story with indigenousness here. The other day, we came up with, my wife and I came up with in a dictionary, in a word other than indigenous. It's the people that were, like from the land there, they are that part of the land. That's what it means. I forgot how you pronounce that word. It's a word of that nature. But in our language, we'll say we call them Ehinama. That's that from this earth itself. It comes from the earth. This earth here, this soil. So we have that story of that history. Even the location. Our old people talk about locations of sacred landmarks. We have that location. So the story of that. So, but a little further to that, we have this story of again, how when he stepped over the Creator's natural law, the Creator now decided that he's going to lend them the children. In our language, these first children that they're going to have. So with that, they call that child. In our language, when you say child, you say awa. That's what we call child in our language. Au comes from the word over here, awikosoin. Which means that which was loaned to you, the gift that was loaned to you in the most holy, sacred way. That's what that means. And over here, sis, the last part of the word. Which means little sky being. That's what it means. So those are connected in that way. So back in them, they literally raised these children like little sky beings, which they were in the belief system that we have, how they came here. So how they were placed here. So it's with that they take it from that. So he very specifically prescribed to that first couple how they were supposed to raise their children. In a very specific orderly way. And they're supposed to raise them. And that one, those types of, that one there takes, just talking about just the growing years of the child, all they're talking about is one thing. And that is the Creator is, prescribing to them right from the time of conception. Our old people, there's several words that they use for that. Right there, the first time, earliest conception, all the way to the time when the child reaches the age of maturity, the growth in their mature years. Right there, for a woman, that would be approximately 20 years old, the age of maturity. And I don't mean to step on your male's toes, but for a male, it's 30 years old. So our minds, according to them, our minds, and we don't fully catch on right away. So, I guess it's that 20 years old. What that is that these old ladies that We talk about one which was recorded at 112, and really she was, they were 11 years off. She was 123. Old people, we were lucky to see them, to witness them, and they running around inside and outside the house at that age, and doing stuff. Not slow, not old, like slow, fast, moderate exercise movement, daily moderate exercise movement, common everyday movement, daily movement, like that, and they didn't die of what do you call sickness either. They announced their death. So those are these groups of elders that we talk about. Some of them coming from that, like we said, that I guess you could say the ones that were within the woods, sort of in the wilderness kind of thing, as long as they could. So it's these old people, some of their stories that, in that way, when they're talking about some of those things in that line, that's why we refer back to them. The reason for that, a long time, it's one of the reasons why, I guess, is because we try to get the excerpt directly from them, from that individual. And that's why we kind of give you an idea on some of those individual and the name of that individual, that kind of thing. It's it could be anywhere from an intro version to a recited version. And we try to, I guess, basically translate that into its literal form. That's why we at times name them, have to, get a chance to name them. It's in our language. It's a form of respect, if you want to call it that. To only name them like a few times, kind of thing. It's kind of that. It's our way of, giving them the respect, that kind of thing. So we don't really, name them every now and then. So we try to obtain that type of belief system continuously. So it's with that, when we talk about that, those earlier stages, in that we're saying with that how when he talked to them in our language, we say that by stage, as we call it, from that very earliest, that's another way of calling it. There's different stages of life within the womb that they talk about, these elders. And each one of those stages are the moon stages of the child as the child is growing inside the womb. And all of those stages have the word I, have that part I in it, which starts off with the word I see no. I see no means a human being. So right at that first earliest conception, we already have I there. See, that very earliest stage. So it's not like, if I was a doctor, maybe up here in a university or someplace, and I had a camera on them, and I started at 3 months old, I started poking at them, and then and they make all these funny faces and stuff like that, and 3 months old, he's human now, that kind of thing. It's not like that. It's just right at that stage, at the earliest stage, where we begin that. Because we have what they would term as a very super sensitivity words. There's words that we have within our language. The culture itself, like they say, the prophecy that the old people say is that in the future time to come, people from this island are going to, and the people that come from the other side of the island, on the other side of the world, they're going to come to an understanding on some of these things of their culture and some of those terms. That was the prophecy that they had. And sometimes I think we're getting kind of closer and closer to that stage. Like this word, for example, there's kind of the way we understand that word is this word. Yeah. young seed. It's a super sensitivity stage right from the time of the earliest conception all the way to age 7 years old. A very super sensitivity stage. Pick up any kind of a vibe, not only from the mother, but from the dad. That kind of thing. So the old lady, she was 123. Old lady, well, recorded at 112. With, again, kind of like it's these old people. They're in their jokingly way. They'll say, well. I feel so young, they're 11 years off, that kind of thing. So really, she's 123. But right there, she's talking about certain things like this word here, and she tells it, I cannot express to you enough, young people enough, of that super sensitive stage that they're in right now. He said, I cannot express that enough, how sensitive that stage is. So the word they pick up vibes and of any kind of a vibe. Another old man who tried to describe it, a Shoshone elder, they have a word for that, the same similar kind of a word for that. Within his name was Tom Weesaw, and then they had words that were similar to that. And my dad, he also had a word that my late father had, as far as to surpass even the intellectual level of comprehension and of an adult, surpasses that. We have a word for that. Ihayues kamwat. That's the word that they use. Ihayues kah. It's like you surpass that level of intellectual capacity at that stage. They have a saying, these old people, some of you might have heard it. Like that, these old ladies, they go, that's that word that they're using over here. Their intellectual level is very powerful. And then, but the belief there is that we, as parents here, whether we aware of it or not, was what she was saying. They mean that have a word for that. Means we erode that amount of capacity, whatever thing that they should have otherwise been born with. One of the things there that, an example of that they talk about is that when the Creator was talking to the first couple, they call it, that means their memory bank was just an awesome memory bank, and to be able to maintain everything. So when he talked to them and prescribed to them how he wants his children to be raised, do you know how long it took him? According to that measurement in time, it took him from the time in the month of May, from the time the sun come up till the sun was at its fastest setting point. And we say, that means in its word for word context, they were able to remember all that. That's how vast their memory bank was, that first couple. So that's what they're talking about, these old people, when they begin, to kind of associate some of those terms and how we, how they try to tell us about that erosion of where we, erode as parents, whether we're aware of it or not. Things like that, of that nature, of that capacity, of what they could have been, would have been, should have been born with, that kind of thing. The pureness in diet, different things, with the intertwining nature of our self, of our whole being. We have within our language symbolic characters which had been taken away from us in the 1800s, early 1800s, we have our own symbols as far as our own traditional culture, which I guess you could say talks about all of the things that were the main ingredients that we're made of as human beings. And it's a sacred writing. Some of you might be aware of it. It's called syllabics. It's got 4 columns by 9 rows. The 4 columns are Neowiawak, the 4 bodies people. That's what we're called. And the 9 rows representing the 9 months of development, the wholeness and how we eventually are born into this, with Mother Earth, and we touch the ground with that Mother Earth. So those are beliefs that we have, and all of those things in which we're made of, they're all beings, all separate beings within themselves that are, if you notice that chart, it's very symmetrical. Symmetry means they're all connected because of that. Just physically symmetrical is an indication of how connected they are with the whole universe out there. In other words, if you took one of those out, it's kind of like a lopsidedness in that. And like those, the people that had taken this writing away from us and claimed that what happened was they took the front row and put it back there in the back row. And that symmetrical nature of what our old people talked about of that was now off balance. It wasn't in perfect order of symmetry. When we say symmetrical in our language, within that orderly of beings in the universe, how they're tied together, they tell us that we have a word for that. Can you read it? It's like these medical terminology. Sometimes you'll see in the medical books, it's straight across the page. What it is with us, we have capacity to, that's part of the oral tradition where we're able to, they call it huktoe. Huktoe is the etymology of that, huktoate, and then the etymology of those language, how we, I guess you could say, dissect it to its derivatives and that kind of thing. So, but these symbols here that we have are our very own. They're, I guess you could say, what we're made of. For lack of a better way of explaining it, how many of you have taken a study of the periodical chart of elements? Okay, you studied it in a I guess you could say, a very simplified way. The only difference between our elements and those elements that you've studied is ours are alive. Okay, that's the only difference. Ours are alive, we're very much alive. And each one of these elements, not only that, but within here, we have other elements. Now, when there's 100 and some odd elements within, today, within science knows it, modern science knows it. But with us, there again, it's different. We have our own story of our, elements of the universe. Incidentally, I heard they found just 2 other new recent elements in the universe. So, but anyway, that's what, and then when you see these are 36, but when you add another one onto these, times 13, okay, that kind of thing. But not only that, you start doubling the characters onto here, and then you start adding them into varying combinations of those doubled elements. That's, lose track of it then. So that's part of that, the old people's story. But each one of these and these, according to our old people, it's like that little baby with their own soul. Over here, they say it's there's a soul here, right there. And that soul belongs to us. That's you. According to our old people, that's us. And this here body is made up of all of these supernatural beings, all symmetrically connected to each other. In the universe, they're like that too. They connected to the symmetry. And that's the word that explains this. You have that order of symmetry within that our humanness too. So those are some of the concepts that we know as far as our people, our traditional people in the pre-contact era of our belief system, of how we knew sacred writings, and today some of them, they call them hieroglyphics or different symbols like that. So, but anyway, it's through this person, this sky being, now they start talking about that. According to the old people, there's stages of development within that sky being that need to be nurtured. Back in them days, they were able, within the recited version that they knew, for several generations they knew that. And then that's the reason why we had ceremonies, because those rituals and ceremonies were our institutions of knowledge, if you want. Those were our places. And today, today, within an academic institution that you see around you, you have 3 basically different types of learning that they have for you. You have your cognitive learning, your psychomotor, and your affective learning. Those 3 types of learning that they talk about. Whereas with us, we have a 4th quadrant of learning. That's a spiritual learning. That's the part we have. They call it. That's the spiritual learning process that we have. But all of those are intertwined, interconnected with each other. They're inseparable. Like these are. They're all they're connected to each other in that way. They have a very orderly connection to each other. And that's why that developmental process has to be one of balance. It couldn't be like cognitive over here. Maybe within our society, maybe we'd have cognitive 90% maybe over here, cognitive, and maybe psychomotor over here, maybe 8% maybe, try and be nice about it. But guess what's left over here? Emotional learning, affective, 2%. See, that's what we mean. We don't have that. We have a very orderly, balanced way of looking at that picture of all of these quadrants that feed into you in a very balanced setting of this, they call it the parameters of the dictates of the Creator's natural law. That's how we raise the children in that manner. So these are some of the kind of like an intro teaching to the, wrong one. That's root beer. So that's anyway. So when we talk about these, I guess Katie and I have our bad habits. That's how we have. We both drink a diet, of course, but even at that, So, but anyway, when we go into that story of that balance, let's take, for example, a word within that of how you're raising your child. The word "semanto," compassionate, kind God. That word itself, to fulfill that child with kindness and compassion, as the child is growing. Even the power and energy of that word, our old people say, is if you have a tendency to kind of like focus that more sway towards that a little more in your upbringing style, our old people say it's so powerful that emotional well-being of raising a child, the rest takes care of itself. That's the saying that they have. These other quadrants, they take care of themselves. That's how powerful that system today. When if you talk to an educator about a curriculum specialist or something, you get boggled by that kind of it's kind of like it's an incredible task, but it's not impossible. I think there was a couple people from UCLA that tried it, but they still haven't got there. Trying to figure it out, that they haven't got there. So back in the 80s, they're still not there. They still haven't got to that point. But with us, it's in our language. It's built into interconnected within our language, and we have that's part of the oral tradition that we have. In fact, with this thing here, these are separate sounds, guttural sounds, and the guttural sounds they provide are the names of the beings within the supernatural beings that are encompassed throughout the universe, and how they're connected with us in that symmetrical manner that I was talking about earlier. So that's part of our, I guess you would say, kind of like a skeletal framework kind of understanding of that. We kind of give you a little, synopsis of what the picture kind of from a holistic viewpoint of how it would look like. So that's the way the old people, but it's these things here when you start breaking them off into. One time I taught a high school class, and we had a whiteboard, and high school class, that one kid back there, James, he put up his hand. Hey, James, what do you want? Kind of like that. Can you write down 1 million for me in Korean? And start writing it down. I got to the other side over here. Oh, he looked at it. I did try to figure it out. But he, read it. He told me, read it. That's what it said. What? Taram, 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 taram. But I guess it's that kind of like a Arabic, kind of a same kind of what do you call a mathematical system that they have, like 10 fingers, like in tens, it's always mitata, the tens, and how we figure out our numeration system and the universe from that, how we, connect ourselves with I guess you could say, the measurements of the cyclic order of the universe from the history of creation story, but all part of that, this with that story too, connected along with that. So, but when we say children is within their different stages, one of the things there that they stress with a male, female, they have a courtship. The courtship stages, the old people talk about, remember they're talking about this mother and father of the universe and child of the universe, that the importance of that, well, they would literally stay with each other until one physically drops. That's how long they would have to stay with each other as part of that law we talk about. And, they're allowed to, if they want to remarry, but they're allowed to court at least a year. Some go for 2 years, and of course, some go for 4 years of, I guess you could say a mourning period within that to heal themselves. And then after that, they could. And then, but anyway, when they say about that, when they talk about the courtship stage, there's 4 stages that they talk about in the human developmental stages. Over here, that first elder, it was so, I guess you could say, it's so detailed, that long story, that there were specialists that specialized in the word-for-word recital of that in some of the lodges. In one of these lodges, you had one that's recited from conception to age 7. And all they're talking about is one thing. How does a mother and father raise that child? How did they talk? Using these 4 quadrants we're talking about, how did they do that? They're talking about that. All 4 stages. The last one, the old people, they say, talked about the entire 4 stages that did one in that area, we call it that Sunchild Old Chiefs area. That was the last person that went through and talked about the entire 4 stages. Usually it was one elder. This one was approximately from conception to 7 years old, talking about the father and mother, how they raised their child. And from here, approximately from 8 years old to puberty. Puberty a long time ago, of course, was, according to these old ladies, we had a grandma there from my mother's side, was 116 years old, Agatha Gooden. She was on a wheelchair though, but she could wheelchair herself around real fast, washing dishes and everything. But her cousin, Nancy Smith, very formal names. These are full-blood Cree Indians. Nancy Smith, that kind of thing. She was also 116, but that one ran around inside and outside the house pretty well, doing stuff really kind of like sleeping up and everything, Anyway, it was those old ladies there that, told us about some of these, how you would, raise these children. This one was from 7 to conception. Conception to 7, and from 8 to approximately 17 years old for a female. Back in them days, but in their days, according to these old ladies we're talking about, their puberty age was 17. Yeah. And this old man that shook my hand, your grandpa, 112-year-old grandpa, 121-year-old grandpa, shook my hand, and we could see it on the light. You can kind of see it go white, and it slowly goes red. Yeah. Shook my hand like that, and he looked like that. He kind of ran back like that. No, see, he laughed at me. You know what he was laughing at? I boo-booed before I reached the age of 30 years old. That's what he was talking about. So these old people, they say that age of maturity that's why they say for a male is 30 years old. Age of maturity for female is 20. Back in them days, his vocal cords never changed till he was 17. And today, these guys are little boys now. Their vocal cords, 12 years old, the vocal cords are changed. What's going on here? He was telling us, He went through the same thing, grandson? You tell me. Yeah, that kind of thing. So he kind of looked at me like that. So those are things that they talk about within the teachings of how the normal flow of how we. And then over here you have the third elder. He's talking from anywhere with a female, 17 and 18 years old, around there. They call it early adolescence for female. For male, early adolescence, and get this, guys, is it's approximately 17 years old to about 25, around there. So that's your early adolescence, guys. So and then anyway, latter adolescence right here. We start talking about this one here for female. It's 19 and 20. Right there, latter adolescence. Male, it's anywhere from 26, 30 years old, 26 to 30. That's his latter adolescent age. So when we say courtship or courting years, back in them days, we're talking about pre-contact era here. And then of course, in the manner that which they were raised, it's I guess you could say today, it might be a little too overwhelming to try and conceptualize it, but let me try to explain to you just a little bit. Maybe you might be able to grasp the concept. And the concept is today we look at a child will look at a big screen TV or something like that. Be sitting there looking at it, or a big screen movie, and that movie's doing all the action and everything for them, color and everything. So what's happening? One part of their brain is actively at work. The other part of the brain remains stagnant. Okay, that's one of the ways that you might want to explain it. So, but this other way, you have an elder talking or somebody telling a story, that part of the brain becomes activated. Why? It's starting to, they have to formulate their own pictures, right, and all that. So what's happening is that they're internalizing that story. It's flowing through them. And remember we were talking about this psychological term, that is $64 word you're using up there, affective learning. That one is emotional learning, positive emotional learning. So that part of the learning process, when they're utilizing that part of their brain, is, and their whole brain, so that it's flowing through their emotional, positive emotion. It becomes an emotional experience at the same time, because it's now their story. They're formulating the pictures from their grandpa or grandma, and their grandma talks about it. So it's becoming their story, and it's implanted in there. And picture, when it's implanted in there, chances are they're going to remember it, because it's their story. They planted it, the color and everything. But it becomes theirs. So that type of a learning process. So that's in one way we might try to explain the concept for you to grasp it, to try to grasp it from that angle. But it's part of that whole process of that entire why were they able to do it? Like these 30-year-old men get to 30 and they were able to understand all of these different concepts. Well, from 26 years old, because of everything here that was told to them in that long story, as we would call it, this long story, it's there again. They didn't have Facebook, Twitter, and all texting and all that kind of, or this, movies, or they didn't have that, but they had their elders. So what was happening was they're going to these teepees, and sometimes it was open to go to any teepee. So they would go to any one of these teepees and they would try to formulate, I think I kind of know that section of how it goes from an intro to a general to a specific word recited into a ceremonial. I think I connected that part, you know, they begin to do that, and then over several years maybe they begin connecting the whole thing for themselves. And so what's happening is it's flowing through them in such a way, this story, that their understanding about certain elements that ought to be in today's level of understanding of certain things that we have physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, were stabilized. So they had a very stable way of looking at life, everything, because it's within them, it's part of it. They had a very stable understanding of certain ways in life. So it's with that, they were then able to start courting for males approximately 26, 27, 28, and 29. The day they turned 30, they could, you know, and there was no physical contact in this court. For a female, you're looking at, you know, for that female court, you're looking at 17, 18, 19, and 20, no physical contact. At, you know, 21, then that's when there's a bonding relationship. But each one of those years, there's a name for each one of those years of court. The first year is called Kagwinstoeton, which means trying to get to know each other. They can talk about everything under the sun, but they're trying to get to know each other, no physical contact. And then second year, Nestoeton, trying to focus only, purely on each other. They're courting, they realize it, and they're trying to focus purely on that concept. That's the two of them. They got in that line. So that's the second year. And they can break it at any time. But based on this history of creation story that they had been walked through, the old lady used to say this story here, this long story, conceptualizing it is one thing, or attempting to conceptualize it is one thing, being walked through and experiencing that story and hitting every part of your emotional, spiritual, everything, your well-being, your total well, that's a different story. She used to say, she used to tell us that. So that's how come you kind of have a more stable grip of what these people meant when they were saying certain things. So it's with that kind of knowledge that they had this, the third year, you would have, the first one is Kagwinstoeton, Nistoeton, almost matching. Third one is Nestoeton is the second one, focusing only on each other. And then the third one is Nistoeton. The first one was Kagwinstoeton, third one is Nistoeton. Nistoeton means knowing each other. Living that here, and he's still visiting the parents where she's at during the day, that type of thing. He's not saying, take your daughter out. None of that. And of course, maybe the fourth year, no more than a hug and a kiss on the cheek. None of this French stuff. The fourth year, what you're doing is, the fourth year you're going into a relationship where they have, I guess you would say, a preparatory, they call it Sakasketoin. So the third year is knowing each other throughout that year. And what that is we now have a pretty good idea of who we are, you know. And it takes that whole year to decide, you got one whole year whether they're going to be together for good or not, that kind of thing. So that, and then the fourth year, they call it Sakasketoin. That old lady, the way the closest she talked about it was, most couples today, this day and age, they say, go to a certain level and they'll say, oh, I love you to each other. And it kind of rests on a plateau. So that what they're feeling, everything. And she said, this one here, he said, because you went through those courting stages and everything properly, you hit a certain point, and she said, Sakaskatoin, it just goes beyond that. And it's, that Sakaskatoin, you can, three words that I try to interchangeably use, and they mean all three things. Growing, loving bond, bonding, growing love, loving, growing bond. See, that it interchanges, interconnects with each other of what it means. And so they hit that point, and it just keeps growing. That's what she was talking about. So that's part of that. And that's called that preparatory year, the preparatory year. That's how come they stayed with each other all the way through. He said, but there again, she was saying, conceptualizing it or attempting to is one thing and walking it is another. Or being placed right from the time of the early ages. Conception is when they start, according to old people, knowing the sounds, the sacred sound system that we're talking about in these 4 lodges. This was in a form of an intro form, the sound system. The second lodge was in its general form. The third lodge is a specific sound form. And the fourth lodge is in its spiritual form. So that's the sounds of that child that's in the womb that's growing. Our old people, they have they saw goes through, they feel those. They grow with that as a child. It matures inside the certain stages of development. So those are parts of the, they talk to you about. But it's during this stage over here, I guess they talk about right here. And they kind of talks about it over here, but over here more so, where it's kind of like, I guess you could say, some of a part of, a little chunk of that, taken a long time, of course, to conceptualize that little portion. Today we would call it prenatal education. They're being taken, that last stage would be like a form of prenatal knowledge and prenatal education. They're being walked through that. Of course, they've been walked through this story, the magnitude of this other story, and they all have that within them already, within their grasp, everything within their comprehension level grasp of all the things that the concepts that are being put forth to them as far as the trying to understand, I guess you could say, in that prenatal knowledge that they're getting. So those are kinds of things that they talk about. So that's the kind of the society these guys were from, that were running away physically. They didn't want to be caught by these redcoats. That they kind of wanted to keep this, that kind of thing. And some went under. My dad, this clan, they went underground with it. They didn't kept it like that. Even their own cousins, they kind of, great grandpa, they kind of noticed that they're already different. So they just kept it within their nuclear, whoever cared to learn. Some of the brothers, of course, like in that line. So that's part of that. So that's one of the reasons why our old people, they say, that's why it remains small, the number. Today, sometimes our old people, they say, certain times in congregations, it's allowable to give you a touch of that. Kind of like an intro version of something, just so enough to be able to kind of then be able to say, okay, now I understand what was this. Why were they making such sweeping statements in the time of 1876? Like, our Mother Earth is not for sale. Like statements of such sweeping statements. Why? that kind of thing. Well, the belief system, of course, with us, these, remember that thing? There's deities up there, all these individual deities over here, like a tiny little baby, full, rich body and everything. This element over here, placed in a certain part of the universe, and another element over here, placed in another part of the universe, complete like us. Mind, body, made in the image of the Creator, complete. Like that, that's the belief system we come from. And then, of course, that belief system, of course, there again, because this carried, according to them, this one here moves our body. So it moves everything, body. And then one day this leaves us. When it leaves us, of course, the body goes back to the earth. That's Mother Earth and all of her deities that are within her. We talk about, they're all going back to those deities. So that's part of the belief system. So that's kind of like, so you could say, a touch of the intro version of how we believe in life, of the completeness, you can say, of the four quadrants of life, of how we understand everything to be respectfully alive and well out there in the universe. So in our culture, the old people say God is everywhere. They mean it literally. So that kind of thing. So they kind of have a very set way, pattern of everything, the cyclic nature of the balance of everything. The absolute oneness with the belief. Like, for example, treaties before contact, the treaties that they had with these peoples of the Americas. By the way, this North and South American continent, our old people, they call it one island. That southern part of this continent, they call it the Saddleback. They call it. And that part where it kind of, you know, how it kind of narrows out like that. That Central America, that part there, the old people, they call it Taiki, the place where the island narrows. That's what they call it. We have Plains Cree, we have names for watermelon, cantaloupe, grapes, apples, oranges, bananas, all of these, tomatoes, potatoes, all of these different, even potatoes, they're here, they belong here. A scientist once said, the Irish people took that potato, took it to Ireland, they call it potato. Scientists said it came from here. Popcorn, one time they found this, I don't know how many 100-mile stretch, the scientists of petrified corn, they said there was over 200 different types of corn, including popcorn. So our young people, once in a while, I tell them, when you're watching that movie over there in that theater, eating your popcorn, you can thank your Muslim and Boko, because they're the ones that figured that one out, I tell you. So it's all of these different things throughout. But anyway, it goes back to that, the concept of the belief system, and who would vouch for it more, this next statement that I'm going to make, and that is the Plains tribes. And one of them is the Plains Cree. Nomadic. This was our living room, North and South America, back and forth, living harmoniously with people. And the treaties we had with all of the intertribal nations from North and South America was based on one single principle. And that was, hey, the Creator made everything perfect. Let's leave it as is. That was and they proved it for thousands of years by becoming eco-specialists within their own territorial zones and maintaining those ecosystems and how so that's why we say the Plains Cree people, who put more votes for it than the ones the nomadic tribes that were intermingling among. We have names for different Cree words for different tribes. Potawatomi, tribes from Kansas. But there again, these anthropologists, they can't pronounce those Potawatomi. It's supposed to be a Potawatomi. That's what they're called. We call them over here Potawatomi. That means people with the sacred, that revere the dream state as holy and sacred. That's what we call them, Pawatamilino. Three words such as Pawani. And there again, anthropologists, Pawnee, the Pawnee. They can't pronounce it. Supposed to be Pawani. Pawani is the fasting place. That's what it means, the fasting people, the sacred fasting people. The Pawanis. The Pawanis. And different ones that we know in that area. Even Oklahoma and further into Central America, there's a tribe there. Again, they mispronounced that word. They call themselves, so even us, even them, they call themselves that. Similar dialects. The analogy would be like the old English Englander accent from days of the bygone era, and the accent of here in North America that we have, the English accent. That'd be the analogy from us, our talk, to those they called in Central America. They call them Gigapao. They call themselves, us too. We call them Gigapao. But again, the mispronunciation, Gigapoo. Kind of like sounds dainty. No, but anyway, that's what those are some of the other kinds of things that we talk about. These different tribes, Meskwaki from Iowa, the Cree words, Chicago. The word, Chicago. By the way, I have a tooth there on the Blackhawks fan. Chicago, that means Chicago, that's a skunk, the deity, the deity of the skunk. We have a skunk deity. So that's what we say, all of these different things, they have a very specific, orderly place within that harmonious relationship of the earth, the purity of the absolute oneness together with nature. That's all part of that. And the tribe, they have these the other names of that, and some of them that kind of like these tribes here, Soto / Ojibwe. With them too, I talk with Soto elders, and I talk in Cree. They understand me. They talk back to me in Soto. I don't understand them. See, the kind of general flow of that discussion, we understand each other. Across Canada, there's Crees right across Canada, through a few different dialects, but we all understand each other. Up into north central BC, we have Crees up there. We understand each other, different, and the same, way we would like in English, but slight little, I guess you call these dialects have little dialectal differences. So basically, they're saying the same thing. With all of that in one, so it that's why we say we vouch for that, that existence of those types of principles of how people used to live with being one with the earth people, and how they maintain that oneness with what they call a pure concept. Yeah. Oh, anyway, so you have all of these different things that the stages, and all of these like new moon, quarter moon, half moon, full moon stages, all of these different stages within the naming of that child, the preparatory stages of that child, how you don't prepare clothes until they're born. You can have receiving blankets, all these soft different types of cushioning, moss, that they use. Moss is a certain thing that they use. It has soapy-like properties, and you wipe with yourself with that, and it cleanses you, it cleans you. And even you chew that, it'll clean the plaque out of your teeth. That one, and they use that for cloths. Before pipe ceremony or something like that, they chew on that, and it seals it too. It seals it. So I don't pass my germs on to this guy here, that kind of thing. So it's ways that we have of purification, maintaining the cleanliness of this individual, trying to maintain that child's, the cleanliness of that child. So we even had layers of that within their backpacks. Of course, back in them days, they travel, and that the old lady was telling us, the younger old lady, the 116-year-old lady, she was telling us that, old lady, Nancy Smith, she was telling us that today, this day and age, they can't do what we did. She said, diet, because of diet and the way they exercise, it's different. She said, they can't do that. If they do that today, they'll miscarry. She said, they'll have a miscarriage. Back in our days, she said, it's nothing to walk 100 miles with a backpack, nomadic tribe. Remember, this is their living room. They're working. And of course, old lady Teresa Suze, her grandmother, they were in this blizzard. She was ready to have this baby, and she said, go on, ahead of me, I'll catch up with you guys. They say, well, one of these, they call them going under the snow. What they do is, she has an additional rope back here, hooks it back over here, and then interior to this back rope over here, she has layers, those what we were talking about earlier, moss hide, that kind of thing. One of them is, then she pulls off those strings over here. Underneath is under the snow. And then one of them is, what do you call that? Placenta, something like that. Placenta layer, that's what we call that. And that layer, that's the layer for that. And they have a way they cut that. So when you wrap that, it's, and then of course they're cutting umbilical cord from this knuckle to this tip over here of how they cut it. You know, there are certain tools, that specialized tools for that too, like there are certain bone, part of a bone, buffalo. They have the way a drying process, how they brace that dry bone and brace it a certain way, and they hit it a certain way, and it flakes it. That's the word that they use, into a knife. Some of them call it white buffalo knife. There's an organization in the States called White Buffalo Knife, and they cut with that thing, and it's like it never gets dull. It seems like it's getting sharper and sharper. So things like that. So that very specific, pure things that they cut with. So she cuts that umbilical cord with that, and then holds the bottom of that from the child's tummy over here, holds it over here, and then squeezes out the milk. We tie a little soft, kind of real soft buckskin at the end over there. Waits for they call it the umbilical cord ceremony. There's a ceremony for that. But we can't get into those kind of things. We just kind of more or less tell you a little. This is just a touch of that. Not even intro, but kind of like a little touch of it. So that, there, they have that part of and then the placenta, they take that, and it's a placenta layer over here. Remember, she had a backpack. She pulled it down here, and it wraps it around in that wiping layer, and then placenta layer of those moss hide layers, wiping layer, and placenta, they call that. That means it's cut in such a way so that when you wrap it, it becomes airtight. There's a nice airtight seal to it. And there's a ceremony for that too. Different types. So all of these different things we have very specific, orderly way of acknowledging that child's birth, holding the child, wiping. The first would there have that another layer there, the wiping layers and stuff, and kissing the child. You don't kiss a child in the lips. They tell us can't do that. They tell us, remember, they're little sky being. He says you can't be doing that. No. Over here someplace maybe. But they say immediately relate yourself right away. Remember that word you were talking about, that super sensitivity word? Immediately relate. If you think, I'm going to wait till they understand a little, maybe 2, 3 years old, maybe. I'll say, okay, hey, my daughter, my son, and maybe I'll say that time. If you think like that, they say that super sensitivity stage in this holy language was given, which they were used to hearing in those teepees. It's like you cut that off. But you continue the process. You say, be in direct kinship with that child, right? Or say, you say, kissing that child. Even words we have, we can't translate them into English. We try close to it, but we can't translate them. They're like this one word we say, Patrick Buffalo, one time and I, we challenged our high school scholars. We have all kinds of scholars over there. One philosopher and all of these different psychologists and different ones, and a couple of them, not too many, but some of them that persevered in Musquetees, and we were challenging them along with some fourth-year students, and some of them into their master's degree levels. We challenged them. I wonder if you guys can translate the word "ami" for me. He said to them the word, and the Cree word "ami," and they tried all of it. And he keeps, no, he kept saying that. What it is this incredible feeling. What it is maybe sometimes it'll dawn on you, a feeling. You pretend if you don't have a child of your own, pretend you have a tiny little baby brother or a baby sister, and you're carrying your little tiny baby sister, and every now, once in a while, you get this incredible rush, and you hold your baby brother, and you kiss your baby brother, and this incredible feeling you have. What happens is, it's so incredible, that feeling. Maybe you're praying or whatever, but tears come out of your eyes. It's so overwhelming, that feeling you have. Tears come out of that. We have a word for that. That's the word that they're talking about when we say "ami." But these guys, they're way out on left field. This one lady, she in the back over there. Oh, let me try, like that. And she, oh, my dearly beloved. So they were trying to translate it, and they couldn't do it. So, but anyway, we have words like that, so they had that, and they kissed that baby there, but they immediately followed by Nitawasimis, that our sister, that I'm, alone in the most holy, sacred way, is you, the little sky being. And I call you, he's allowed me to call you my child, but I'm being alone, but I love you. You have a way of expressing, and then from there you have me, the kiss and that, and then the word, and then you're relating yourself with that child, but you either say my son or my daughter. Ami, mikosis, ami, nitsans. You immediately relate yourself. If you do that word that we were talking about earlier, here, that fourth word, sakasketoin, remember? That loving, growing, bonding, love, bonding, they're interchangeable. You hit that, you say, if you hit those points within those ceremonial stages of growth, of development, if you happen to hit those points using two things only, hope and prayer, we don't know if you want to hit it either. If you happen to hit it, according to the old people, you can connect with that word with your child. We call it sakasketo. You will connect it. That child will stay close to you later as that child. We have even words for that. Metsimut. That's the word we use. Metsimut. It's pretty hard to try and explain some of those. It's kind of like you begin those processes right from conception, and you're doing certain things, acknowledgement, physical, mentally, emotional, spiritually, and but the focus is on the child, and you're wanting to go through with those, even firsts and everything. But first time they kind of, like they see something, kind of like turn their head. That's a ceremony. First smile. You know, first laugh, first fart. Mine must have been a big ceremony. But anyway, those different things like that, you know, they have different acknowledgement way ceremonies. And so there again, we can't go out and teach you the ceremonies, but we have our, you know, just our way of, what it is again, that word super sensitivity, the word that we use in Yemsi, again, that unseen link, spiritual link, communication you're developing with that soul. And then sakaskathon, that word we were talking about, there again, we're developing all of that. It's being part of you, raising that child. That's the pre-contact belief system we had here of how we raised our children, the oneness we maintained in the societies we entered. They had their own beautiful history of creation stories too. We respected those too, their stories, but we just had our own story too. And they respected us. We were kind of inter-tribal relation. Common denominator stuff, a lot of it. You know, like the belief in deities and everything like that. All across, you know. So it's not like the concept when we watch on TV, you know, when looking into the TV and we say Mother Nature this and Mother Nature that, you know, that kind of thing. With us, it's when they say Mother Earth, we mean it literally. She's a living deity. And everything that grows out of her are separate living deities that are interconnected within their, I guess, their own way of connecting this, just the earth itself, you know, that of how they connect that. So those are, you know, again, teachings that we have within our, my dad used to call it the University of Nature. He used to call it, you know, kind of their own more detailed, different levels, versions of it. The mom, the mother, which is our mother, the earth, takes her part of that with the deities that she's with. That's the word that they use. That means all those deities that are with her, they take that back. But you, that soul, you know, that's you. You say that one's you. Yeah.
About the elders, were you referring to the knowledge that was given to them that was taken into the ground?
Some of them, they tell us.
They went underground.
Yeah, they tell us that they leave it in four different levels, 4 different places, and the old people, they say because it depends on how close you get to this belief system of you know, everything is alive and well, and how well you address yourself in a daily, through your gestural mannerisms or whatever to that. And when you get close enough to it, old people say you can actually hear the echoes of their voices. They're still echoing. Sometimes you echo. You could hear it. You hear your voices echo. They have a word for them. They say that's what they're talking about. And the earth too at the same time goes down and back up. It hits us. It's echoes everywhere. So that's what they were relating to when they do that. When they say that. Any other questions? Okay. So if there's no more questions, what we're going to do? Yes.
Ay kamamskut naman na saya ka hawa was so what's
Yeah.
there's a level of stages that baby and I BBC say he'll pick it.
Yeah.
Egonitsi na pe kwanani developmental stages ka kamamskut naman na. Pe kon minakta.
Yeah.
Ay BBC sana ka pick it.
Yeah. Ja, ik dacht min ook niet. Het was skica zitten dat is ook. Maar alle dem ook kwam Aikete kan mij zien hoe dat is tegen die korting ai zien om met die ja het ai zien om ja het van men daar. Dan pak maar ja. Het is ja ik dan skeet een peski. Ik kan dat pes man pes niet. Tau getegen. Ik was samen niet daar. In nicht dauerget, das Gott sei ja. Tahkiogi Gokte Mahayaka. That's what say. You need to I can meet to Ogaya. That's what's just like get to Haya. Can ich tau getan, ma? Capson na would see him, it's still connected. And don't go for them. You can't make it still connected. Like this on money, quit, some good school here. The universal make quit, some good school. Fancy kit see ka sun. Mit siya man ya so a pegamo with the mother, that's what they're relating to with the universe. Fancy kit see ka sun. So that's part of that. So that's a good kid. See, that's kind of what your question. That's what the etymology is. Part of that. And cycling, yeah.
You were mentioning that each of the sounds is connected to a deity.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering where we can learn more about those deities or, in that connection to ourselves.
I think a lot of that I'm finding out. One of my uncles, actually a couple of my uncles, they went, even with other nations of people, they have those sounds. Like one of my uncles went to, a couple of them went to Egypt and different parts of Egypt and different places, and they have this one symbol that's they call it kind of like a common denominator sound, and the symbol is that. It's a circular. It's that little circle. And how you sound out that symbol is, and it's the same symbol that they have over there, the same sound that are produced from that symbol. Some of the universal sounds that they produce over here too, we have that. So it's a kind of like a common denominator base. They say that there's starting points, and you can go from a starting point, they say, but it takes time, but you eventually get there. Sometimes they say years of protocol, maybe with different old people, eventually you get to it. But the thing about that whole process with our old people is that it's like, because they're one family, it's kind of like what I was talking about with those people that hid. It's kind of like you have to almost like be a part of their family. And it's kind of like you have to, it might take you years on end or something, but eventually you get to a point where they trust you enough, love you enough, and you're just like that family member, and there they begin to give you a little bit more than just this very, very light stuff you just got today.
Or you can go to Enoch Tuesday nights and he teaches crazy syllabics. And he tells the story of the
sound
syllabics.
system, the sound system.
We just wanted to make sure that we mentioned this. All this week and all next week is the Rubaboo Performing Arts, Aboriginal Performing Arts Festival. And it's going on at the library downtown, as well as La Cité near Collage Saint-Jean. It's going on there as well. And you can look on the Alberta Aboriginal Performing Arts website, and you'll see all of these fantastic plays. They have poets, they have music, they have all kinds of artists. One of our daughters, Sohemo, actually we have 6 daughters, but she's one. She's the co-founder of the Aboriginal Performing Arts. And she's also the chief executive officer of Dream Speakers, as well. So there's this cooperation or partnership between them. So there's film, all kinds of Aboriginal artists. There's dance, and it's all Aboriginal people doing it. I mean, so many people say, where is the face of Aboriginal people in the city? Well, here is the face. For the next 2 weeks, this is going on. I only have one little calendar with me, but there's a fantastic play, Huff, going on at the library downtown. It starts at 7:30 tomorrow evening. It's just a fantastic play. And then they have like a fusion night where they have poets and singers and musicians and visual artists working all at the same time. There's a really fantastic festival that Aboriginal artists are putting on over the next, I guess, 2 weeks now. 1.5 weeks now it would be. So, like I say, I'll leave this with you, Larissa, okay? And if you could use your network possibly
Yeah, we can send
to
out something
let
too.
people know what's going on. And I also want to thank you so much for coming out this evening. I hope that we help to expand your knowledge a little bit more. I'd like to especially thank my husband for his sharing of knowledge and the committee that helped to put this on. Thank you so much. And we really enjoyed being here with you this evening.